You're very welcome along to the Keith Andrews Show. As ever, you can watch us on all the platforms, Twitter, YouTube and Facebook. Joining me this week, Mr. Dave McIntyre. Dave, thanks for coming in.
Delighted to be in.
Good man. Oval ball's gone for a bit.
Yeah, it'll be all
for
a couple of weeks. We've got the big Champions Cup rugby in a couple of weeks, which will be live and exclusive and off the ball. Saracens Leinster. But aside from that, yeah, it's kind of 7 weeks of madness and back into.
How was last Saturday in Twickenham?
It's great.
Atmosphere unreal.
Unbelievable. Last 20 minutes when you kind of felt you were getting to the point where it was in the bag, and people in the stands, the thousands of Irish that somehow managed to get their hands on tickets, as they so often do, they really started to make their presence felt, and you could hear the Olays and the fields of Athenry starting to build up and heading to the last quarter of an hour at the home of rugby. Spectacular way to finish it. Like, you couldn't ask for anything better. And just the way that we started it with that unbelievable Sexton moment, and then to finish it at a canter almost. Incredible. Was
that the best answer, that one, or back in the Aviva for you?
Yeah, well, I suppose there was times during the Welsh and Scottish games where the atmosphere was brilliant. The Scotland game, the first half, the atmosphere was great. Second half was actually quite poor because you knew the game was done and Ireland weren't really in any danger. During the Wales game was probably the best atmosphere at times, and then in the first half of the England match when Ireland were scoring their tries it was magnificent. But there's just such a different feeling to this Grand Slam. You kind of feel this is just the start of things. Something. Whereas in 09 it was, well, thank God we've got that monkey off our backs, because we hadn't even won a championship in 09.
To go to Twickenham though and win fairly comfortably.
Yeah, we don't do that.
No, do we?
We haven't won there in 8 years, and the times we do win there, it's a one-score game generally. The big wins that we had in 04, 06, 2010, they were really close games. But to go there and be up by 21 points, was it 21-5 at the break? It's unbelievable. Unbelievable first half performance.
In other news this week, I seen my first ever episode of Ireland's Got Talent. Last night.
Where did you hear it was on? Probably heard it was on.
It was unbelievable.
Certainly didn't tell people that it was on. It's been getting a great reaction.
Has it? Yeah. I thought I'm a bit oblivious to that. I don't watch a lot of TV. My mum and dad were over last night and they watch it, so it was on in the house.
They took control of the TV.
Well, you've got to do that, haven't you? At this stage of life, just go and watch what you want after a bit of dinner. Have you seen Double Impact?
No.
Have you heard of Double Impact?
No.
Oh my God, you need to watch these. Joe, have you seen Double Impact? No, Joe's nodding. Unbelievable.
What do they do?
It's like a dance duo, the two of them. They're only kids. One of them's, the little girl, I think, is 9. She's from Tala. The lad is 12. And you want to see the way he looks after her. Unbelievable. And she is a character.
Are they friends or brother and sister, or what are they?
No, I just think they're from the same dance club. But I haven't seen a previous episode, just seen that.
So they made the semis and the final now?
They made the final now. So they got voted through by the judges.
Right.
So I thought that would have been right up your street. I thought I was going to bring something to the table.
I'm like you, I don't get to watch any TV.
Yeah.
I don't even get to watch live sport, let alone TV.
I do watch live sport.
A couple of box sets here or there, but I'm
keep an eye off.
I'm seriously considering, getting rid of some of the sports subscriptions I have, because you're either going to a game at a game or watching highlights of games.
You'll regret it. You'll have that day off and you'll think, I should have this, I should have that.
It's certainly not paying its way at the
You're
moment.
not one of those people on a dodgy box either, are you? Some people in this building.
No, I couldn't live with myself.
No, I don't know how they can look in the mirror. Right, moving on. Come on, we're going to get back to basics.
A lot of time looking in the mirror.
We're going to talk about Ireland-Turkey tomorrow. Now, there's a lot made about friendlies. I think this one in particular was a good idea. The fact that when I walked into this building today to chat about it, I was chatting to a couple of people, what any murmurs team and what's the hype around it been? It's been that kind of downbeat and that kind of quiet because of the fact that they're in Turkey. The awards on Sunday were a bit of a snow out. I seen a few of them in Birmingham Airport. I was stuck there the other day, and it's just kind of hasn't really got going. Whereas I think it's an as exciting squad as we're going to get. Going into this period after the disappointment of a few months ago, obviously, Martin gets, the usual questions. We need young blood in the squad. We need fresh. The young players that everyone wants, they're not ready. A lot of the 21s aren't ready. We've seen Declan Rice in the squad, but it's a squad, and it's an opportunity for a lot of players. I think when you look at some of the players, the age they are, mid to late 20s, that haven't played a lot of football or any football, international football. When you look at some of them, I think it's an unbelievable opportunity for some of them to go and stake a claim.
I'm because it's your
Skeptical,
show.
aren't you?
Because
You're
it's your
skeptical,
show,
aren't you?
and you asked me to come in today, and you're an ex-international footballer. I'm going to try and muster
Don't.
some enthusiasm for this game.
Just be
and
honest.
for international friendlies in general, because normally I really can't. But of all the friendlies we may play this year, and I know there won't be as many given the new structure in international football, and that we've got the Nations Cup to look forward to in the autumn. This probably is the one that I will be most interested in because of one or two new faces. But for me, it's only one or two. Like the guys you've been talking about, they haven't been able to get into the starting 11 for the previous World Cup qualifying campaign because they just haven't been good enough. And this was them getting into a team that was not playing well, albeit achieving decent results to the point where we managed to get ourselves into a playoff, and a team with an age profile that would worry you. So I don't see there being enough evidence for me to be putting my faith in guys who are in their mid to late 20s who are suddenly going to be put into the starting 11 because guys have stepped away or guys are injured. So I wouldn't share an awful lot of positivity around those guys, but I really want to see Sean Maguire start.
I don't think that's in doubt. I really don't. I look at the top end of the pitch.
But what did you make of Martin O'Neill's comments about, is he trying to keep Sean Maguire's feet on the ground by saying publicly, well, you know, I saw him play for Cork City a couple of times and it wasn't that impressive. This is the guy that was scoring at over a goal a game for a long period of the League of Ireland season before he went to Preston. He's got 5 and 4 since he's come back from his hamstring problem. Why say that publicly?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Tell everybody you think he's playing extremely well and you can't wait to get him into the team.
Martin's making the point that unless he sees him play well, it doesn't particularly matter. Well, it does particularly matter.
It's a nonsensical comment.
Really does. Yeah, I totally agree. And when you look at the options or lack of options that we have up there, Hogan's come back into the Villa squad the last couple of months, done quite well. He's been back out of it then again in recent weeks with Lewis Grabban playing up front. We know about Shane Long, all about him. Whether he can get two of them up front, Shane Long and Maguire. If you play Maguire as a front striker on his own, you have to play in a particular way. You cannot just lump it.
No, we certainly
Johnny
don't
Walters,
play in the way
Darryl
that we played
Murphy.
in the last campaign.
No. So we have to play. And when you look at some of those midfielders, we have to play in a certain way. He has to give them and trust them to go and play proper football. Don't give them the licence to it.
Well, we're back to the old debate, aren't we? That old chestnut of...
Stay on Sean Maguire, though. Stay on Sean Maguire.
Okay.
So
I think that a lot at times where Ireland got most joy over the last few years was when you had a central striker and you had at least one of the two other players in that front three was a striker. So it was usually Shane Long or Robbie Keane with John Walters. And then we know James McLean can play in that position as well. And John Walters and McLean were defensively minded enough and fit enough and dedicated enough to make sure that they were in defensive positions when they absolutely needed to be. I would like to see Shane Long, particularly because he desperately needs some minutes of any description, to start on the right. If it's a 4-3-3, if that's the way we're going to go, and you put Sean Maguire through the middle and maybe James McLean if he's going to start this game on the left-hand side.
Well, we're severely lacking in wide areas. In terms of wide players for this squad, you've only really got James McLean, Horgan. Alan Judge can play there, but his best position is more central. I have a sneaky suspicion he might go 3 at the back for this game. With the personnel in terms of, you've got 5, initially you had 6 full-backs in the squad.
So who are the wing-backs then?
Cunningham's just pulled out a few days ago. You've got Enna Stevens, who's playing really, really well at Sheffield United. Came from Portsmouth in the summer. Derek Williams, he's a left-back for Blackburn at the moment. He's been comfortable playing left side of a 3 centre-backs, Bristol City in the past. Right side, obviously we've got Seamus Coleman back, which is great news. Cyrus Christie and Matt Doherty, who's probably going to be in the Championship Team of the Year. I'd be amazed if he isn't.
I would like to see Matt start tomorrow.
What about Seamus?
Well, if you're to play a 3, I'd be surprised if he did that. But can Seamus play on the right side of the three, or are you taking away from what he can do with the ball?
I think
can
so.
Matt play on the right side of the 3?
No, you're taking away from this game.
Do you play with one of them on the other side?
Matt Doherty has played
that
left
many
back
times over
from
the
Matt
years.
Doherty.
So if Matt Doherty is capable of doing that job, wouldn't it be interesting to see him do that? I don't know if that's the shape of things to come, and if it isn't, is there any point to it?
But why isn't it? You look at the personnel. We've got Declan Rice coming into the squad now, which we're all delighted about. Duffy's just got Player of the Year. Kieran Clark hasn't had his greatest season at Newcastle, but he's fairly consistent in a green shirt. You've got Long, Pearce. I don't quite see why he's in the squad, because I think he's always been that 4th, 5th choice. And young Darrell Lenihan, who's also at Blackburn Rovers, who's come back from injury and come into it. But I look at that and I would like to see Shane Duffy, Rice and Clark as a back three with those wing backs ahead of it.
With Doherty and Coleman.
Yeah. Or Enda Stevens on the left hand side for one half.
It'd be interesting to see for a couple of games. Is there a worry though that so few of them are playing in a back three at club level?
We see the Welsh do it though when they come, and I know the reason they do it is mainly to get the best out of Gareth Bale at the top end of the pitch. But in terms of what you've got available, we've no wingers. We've got James McLean and Daryl Horgan. I know Robbie Brady's injured. I know Colm O'Dowd is injured. We haven't got serious attacking threat. We've got a lot of midfielders that are similar type ability, and I think we've got decent centre halves and we've got very good wing backs. So I just think it makes sense to play that.
Well, we shall see.
Centre midfield. One player I really like, and I hope he gets an option, or I hope he gets an opportunity, is Alan Brown. If anyone hasn't seen a lot of him play, he's similar-ish to Jeff Hendrick. Probably not as polished. Is he as good as Jeff Hendrick? No, not right now. But in terms of players banging form, playing really well, playing as an advanced midfielder, and playing in a way where if we do have to go long, which we do a lot, he makes things happen because he's full of energy. He runs beyond strikers. He's been playing in that advanced area for Preston this season with Gallagher and Pearson just behind them in centre midfield.
See, there's no issue with going long if you've got midfield players who are willing to get ahead of the ball. And the problem over the last few months was that we went long an awful lot of the time and the ball was just bouncing off Darryl Murphy or Shane Long, whoever it happened to be up front. And even if they did manage to make something of it, whether or not they won the ball primarily or they managed to hold it up or whether they just forced the defender into a wayward defensive header, there was nobody breaking to try and pick up the second ball. So I've no issue with, a defender getting his head up and pinging it down on top of somebody as long as it's measured and as long as somebody's willing to get ahead of the ball. So that could be Alan Brown. Jeff Hendrick was anonymous in his attempts to do that for the last few games of the campaign. It was just,
I don't think he's had a good campaign. I think he struggled.
He hasn't really. We just expected so much of Jeff when we left the Euros. Yeah. Because he had such a good championship. Yeah. And just fair to say, for Ireland anyway, he hasn't come close to that. But I've seen him play twice in the flesh for Burnley this season and he's been absolutely excellent. Yeah, I agree. But then we need to sort that conundrum out, that why has he felt the pressure playing for Ireland after the Euros? Because he is a big player for us. He is that new breed. When we've seen the retirees of the last few years, he is part of that group where... Doesn't he know exactly what his role is? Does he know it? Sean Dyche. Oh, absolutely knows. And I don't think he actually plays. That field and he knows exactly where he needs to be, what's expected of him. And so he has that focus going onto the field of play, knowing exactly what's required of him. He gets shuffled around in the Ireland team because of his versatility. Yeah. A lot of the time we've seen him playing tucked in on that right-hand side. Doesn't suit him at all. Where he plays for Burnley now, for me, isn't his best position either. He plays as an advanced centre midfielder, like Alan Brown does for Preston. That doesn't suit him entirely either, because they're very different types of number 10s. We've seen Wes retire. He can play it, but it's a different type, isn't it? And I look at the front players we have here available, and if we are going to play, then they're not the type of number 10s you need. I think we need to set up in a midfield three of one sitting and two with licence to get forward, not an orthodox number 10 type. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I'd but like each of the see, if you're doing that, if we're tweaking it to the extent that where we might go three at the back, for example, with a couple of wide men, and then that midfield three that you're talking about, one sitter and then two ahead of them, each of them has to know exactly what the role is. Yeah. And when is the last time you watched this Ireland team and you felt confident and comfortable watching them going out onto the field, that everybody in this side is drilled and knows exactly what's required of them, a la a Northern Ireland team or an Iceland team, for example. Everybody knows where they need to be. And there's no point tweaking the formation. There's no point picking guys a little bit out of position. There's no point bringing in new caps if they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. But I don't think that's going to change. So that's infuriating. Yeah, but that's where we are. He'll have the guts of a week with them. This week? Yeah. Yeah. Like, you need to spend every minute showing players, even if it's, as mind-numbing as it might have been under Trapp at times,
We knew what we were doing.
Or, like when you watch Crystal Palace at the start of the season, you're watching a side where none of the players really seemed to know what was
There's a lot
being
of grey
asked of
areas,
them by
wasn't there?
Frank de Boer.
Playing a three at the back. Yeah, you're right in town. It's a decent analogy.
And then Roy Hodgson comes in, and yes, the players might be going home bored, senseless. But they know when they turn up for training the next day that they're going to learn something. And that most importantly, when they cross the white line on a Saturday afternoon, everybody knows what the role is. And Ireland will not improve unless the manager is willing to put individual one-on-one time in with these players and telling them, well, you're starting on Saturday and this is what we need.
Yeah, but I don't think that's going to happen, Dave. I think we both know
So
that's
how
not
can we
going to happen.
improve then? Because we don't have any world-class players.
I'm not
We
disagreeing.
don't have a
with you.
Bale that's going to dig us out of
No,
the hole with a free kick
exactly.
or a moment of genius or a thumping header off a brilliant ball in from wide areas. And it's just lazy. It's why one of the reasons why I find it very difficult to become enthusiastic about these types of games, because
I came in here positive, and you've drained the life out of me now.
well, if you were really positive deep down to the very core of your soul, my lack of positivity should not be able to affect you so quickly. We've only been on air for about 12 minutes.
I'm positive about certain players getting the opportunities. Alan Judge, Alan Brown, Conor Hourihane, who's had a good season at Villa, who, by the way, I would say set up in a similar type of way in terms of the management, Steve Bruce, similar-ish to Martin O'Neill in terms of, I think it's player-driven. You know, you look at a Villa team, you think, you can tell within 10 minutes of watching the team, or not 10 minutes actually, that's not, if the game's open and if it's an equal game for 10 minutes, you can see what a team are trying to do. If they're under the cosh, all right, I accept you can't. But you can tell fairly soon what a team does, how they're worked out, how they're structured, what are the tactics employed by the respective manager.
Okay, when's the last time you watched Ireland and felt that way?
Well, I don't get that, and it's very
So
similar
there
to
you
Aston
go.
Villa. Yeah, I know, but
So
I'm
you
not
remember when
okay with that.
When Conor Hourihane made his debut in the friendly.
Yeah,
And it didn't go well for him.
No.
Because he just couldn't get into the game
Yeah,
at
he
all.
struggled a
Couldn't get
little
onto
bit,
the
didn't he?
ball. But
Yeah.
I felt sorry for him that night.
Yeah.
Because firstly, and I just keep saying the same thing, I don't think he knew what he was being asked to do. Secondly, the team wasn't playing well. And thirdly, it was a game where there wasn't an awful lot at stake. And so it was probably very hard to impose yourself on it in any meaningful way. And he hasn't really had a chance since. And I would fear that there might be one or two people who are coming into the team tomorrow in what we probably anticipate will be a hostile enough atmosphere. And the game might well pass them by, and that will be a black mark against them
but
going
that
forward.
is then down to the player. All right, so stay on Conor Hourihane. Right, he goes from Barnsley under Paul Heckingbottom, were a well-drilled, well-coached team with limited ability, but you could tell exactly what they're doing. Centre half split. Conor Hourihane played it was a narrow 4-4-2. As soon as he got the armband, he just instantly became more responsible in terms of his game. So when he went to Villa and he was used to this type of system, well coached, Monday to Friday, you know what you're doing, meticulous preparation, he goes to Villa, and look, I don't know what goes on behind the scenes at Villa, but you can tell when you watch them play, it's player driven. They rely on the individual brilliance of certain players that they have. He struggled to deal with that at the start because he's, before it was I pull into this area and then I know the right back comes in here, or I know the right winger goes there. Very, very different scenario. And you're right, in terms of his debut for Ireland, he did struggle. He struggled to affect the game. These players have to know that. So if they get 90 minutes, 45, 20 minutes tomorrow night against Turkey, they have to make that count. Don't think it's going to be like your club level and you're going to do the same things. Work out what it's going to take for you, whatever position you do. So for instance, midfield, you can always affect the ball. You can always affect the ball out of possession, and you have to use it well in possession. Work out what's going to impress Martin. How are you going to be?
I would not like to be in a position where I'm a midfield player and I have to figure out for myself what will impress Martin O'Neill. Carrying out the manager's instructions to the nth degree is what should impress a manager. And it's all well and good for Aston Villa, one of the richest clubs in the Championship, with arguably the biggest attendance in the Championship, Premier League pedigree, a manager that has been in the Premier League for many, many years and has won everything at domestic level, like playing for his club. And you know that you have the financial resources to buy probably some of the best players in the Championship. So the chances of a player-driven environment being successful are far higher than the chances of a player-driven environment with the Republic of Ireland being successful, because we are nowhere near up to the level of Aston Villa in relative terms when it comes to international football.
I don't know. I disagree
teams,
with that, right? I disagree with that in terms of at club level. So he goes to Villa, he doesn't like it, you can go somewhere else. If Snodgrass or Adoma or Grealish, whoever it is at Villa, they don't quite like the way this is set up, they can jump ship. They can do whatever to move in the January window or the summer window. You can't do that with Ireland.
Yeah, but
it's your country.
You're playing with players. You're some of the best players at that level at which you're playing.
Yeah, I agree. But I think you take more ownership, you take more responsibility when you're playing for your country, and you maybe accept more factors that you wouldn't at club level. So, for instance, this player-driven, non-meticulous fashion in which we're getting ready for a game, you swallow it, you accept it, because it's the greater good.
But he's playing with those players every day, and he's playing with them in a game, in a competitive game every weekend. So the time for Conor Horan in that position where if you say, he doesn't like it and, we can always look elsewhere in January, but there's no need to, because he knows eventually if he's good enough, he's going to adjust to that environment, because he's training with them 5 days a week and he's playing with them most weeks between August and May twice a week. Whereas with Ireland, he's just going to rock up for a week. He doesn't have the time, and after this week he's going to head off again.
Yeah, I know.
He doesn't have the time to acclimatise, to make himself comfortable in that environment. And as you say, it's an unusual phrase you've used because I don't really understand it. Figure out what the manager needs to see to be impressed.
But what from that, what I'm saying is, in terms of who has he picked in the main as a centre midfielder? What qualities did I bring to the table? What does he expect? That's the route they need to go down.
But we've been watching him for years. We don't know what he expects from his centre midfielders.
Look,
he doesn't expect them to pass the ball. It often looks like he doesn't expect them to win tackles. All he expects them to be is just behind the ball.
No, I don't think so. He wants aggressive players in that area. He wants players at the right time to break things up. Yes, to be solid and know your roles. And look, whenever he's had, I don't want this to turn on to Martin O'Neill, but in terms of teams he's been successful with, it's always been senior players knowing the game fairly well, doing the right things more often than not. And I think Hourihane is getting to that stage. But what the bigger point that I'm trying to make here in terms of all these players, the newer players into the squad, or players with few caps, it's just an opportunity. Don't let the opportunity slide by the wayside and in 6 months' time when you're not in another squad and blame Martin O'Neill. This is the hand you've been dealt. You're in the squad, make it count.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
This is the hand they're being dealt, but I'm just making the point that this should not be the hand that they're being dealt.
I agree, but it is. Life's not fair. Life's not fair. Right, before we get off Ireland chat...
So we agree on that?
Yeah, we agree.
I don't think we agree with anything else we've talked about.
Before we get off Ireland chat, I was in Birmingham Airport, stuck in Birmingham Airport on Sunday. Missed one flight, ended up getting one hours and hours later, and I kept bumping into James McLean, who was trying to get back for the awards. He missed the same flight I was on. I think he booked about 3 or 4 flights into Belfast, wherever. I don't know how he got home, but he did get there, obviously. I expected him to get the Player of the Year award. I was a little bit surprised that Shane Duffy got it. Now, that's not saying I didn't think Shane Duffy had a good campaign or a good year, because I did. But I don't know, I didn't give it a whole lot of thought, but I just expected him to nick the award ahead of Shane Duffy. Were you a little bit surprised, maybe?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised. For me, he was the best player over the last 12 months in an Ireland shirt. Now, Shane Duffy had a really good campaign, particularly in the beginning, in the middle of it. And that one game, the 2 games at the end in Cardiff and in Copenhagen, I thought he was absolutely brilliant. So it's probably a little unfair to construct an argument as to why Shane Duffy didn't deserve that award. But I do think that the guy, and as you've been talking about this player-driven environment, nobody drives that environment more so than James McLean. I think his personality and his energy is probably the most suited. Like if you're asking Conor Horan to have a look at himself and say, we haven't really been coached here. We haven't really been trained. I'm not quite sure how the team is supposed to be set up for this game against Turkey. But if I'm looking around to try and figure out exactly what it is that pleases Martin O'Neill, I should look at the way James McLean plays. Now, not that someone like Conor Harron is a very different type of player.
Yeah.
To model himself on.
And character.
But you have to bring that kind of energy and that drive, wherever about your position and what you believe your best abilities are as a midfield player. But his goals, for me alone, should have seen him win the award.
Yeah, like that goal in Cardiff. Like we were both there that night.
The one in Cardiff, the one in Vienna.
Yeah. Vienna was an unbelievable team goal.
It was, but he still had a lot to do.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I totally agree.
And the moment in the first half against Denmark at the Aviva where we're 1-up and he flashes that one across goal and it misses the far post by half a yard.
He spoke recently when he was over here doing a little gig and he said about the small details and the fact that since that night, do you remember the chance he had to make it 2-0? When I seen him in the airport the other day, we were just chatting for 10-15 minutes and he brought it up again and he was just chatting to me about, yeah, I know, but that one, and like he's still beating himself up about that.
Well,
I didn't think it was that. That's exactly what I said to him.
Yeah.
Angle closing.
Yeah.
It was a half a chance.
The way he likes to strike the ball, he likes to strike across the ball from out to in. So the angle was always going to be on. Really, the best two options to score from the position in which he found himself would have been to hit it with the outside of his left foot so he could get the ball coming in towards the goalkeeper, or the instep of his right foot. And his instinct is to get the head down and to a controlled effort. And that is why he scored in Vienna and that's why he scored in Cardiff. He got his head down, he hit it first time and it was controlled and it was the power that beat the goalkeeper on both occasions. Whereas this time it probably required a little more elegance to it, but there's zero blame on James McLean for not scoring.
And I said that to him. So
he probably feels that way because of how things have turned out.
Yeah, and I think the fact that he is now in that bracket of leaders and he feels the responsibility, you can see the pride oozes from him.
I think he's the most important player in that team, particularly in the absence of Seamus Coleman, who we now have back. But we probably are at the point where in a competitive international qualifier, if he doesn't deliver an 8 out of 10 performance, it's highly unlikely we're going to win the game.
Yeah. We've had a couple of pullouts in this squad. Greg Cunningham, unfortunately.
When is his time going to come? I feel so sorry for him.
Feel so. He's come through a couple of really bad injuries and he's slotted back in at Preston. Well, so I do feel for him, and he's a lovely fella as well. Harry Arthur's pulled out with a calf strain. And one other player who's pulled out has been Liam Kelly. What are you laughing, Dave? So we had a little video here. I think it was Dan was chatting about this situation. So let's have a little listen to what Dan had to say.
Bemused really with the whole thing, I guess.
Right. As in there's no chance England are coming in?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's strange. I think what we are seeing now is the climate has changed in the sense that I don't know, maybe some players believe that the bar that's been set to play for England isn't as high as it once was, in the sense that they're operating off a reduced pool of players in the Premier League, and you're seeing guys get into squads that I guess some players who ultimately want to play for England see these guys get in and go, well, maybe I should never get up. It's like the old Ricky Lambert theory, you know. It may well be that Liam Kelly at 22 doesn't believe he's going to get the option, but he might think at 25, 26 that is something that could become viable if he continues his progress of the last two seasons, which, it must be said, has been very good. He's had a decent year this year for a team that's struggling. He was excellent last year, but there's still a level of disappointment when it happens in this way. And you know, he's spoken before about wanting to play for Ireland. Now doesn't want to. What happens if England don't call? Does he come back in the future? I'm not sure the public are going to be mad about that. Just, you know, the response today, in some ways, O'Neill is throwing him out there, you know, and he's I wouldn't say he's throwing him under the bus, but he's certainly put it in such a way that there's an unsympathetic view towards Kelly amongst Irish fans that I think would be hard to forget if for some reason in 2 years' time he wants to come back and play for Ireland for some reason.
That was Dan McDonald giving his thoughts on it. Have you seen Liam Kelly play much?
No.
Okay, so...
Don't need to, though.
Right, before you get into it, right, just let me explain him as a player before we get into it. He's like a five-a-side player in terms of...
Not a good start.
He was likened to Iniesta by Jaap Stam, which I think is a little bit blown up. Right. But anyway, he was going to be released, I think, by Brian McDermott in the terms of way Brian McDermott likes to play at Reading. Long, direct, short things up. He was close to getting released. Jaap Stam comes in, total change of style of play, and he fit into that style. And he's a decent player, there's no doubt about that. But very disappointing in terms of playing 19s, playing 21s, been called up to a squad last year. I think he had to pull out with some kind of injury. And then this time around, obviously was going to be given an opportunity to be in the squad and see what he's made of, maybe get a cap. And then it just doesn't sit well at all, this at all. It really, really doesn't. Like, why is there a grey area? You look at, Dan's mentioned there in a couple of years' time, but for me, it's done now. I know he's a young man. He's not that young.
And that's the point Kevin was making the other night, that he's finished now as a future Ireland international. Dan used the word bemusement there, and I like that word, and I would add indifference when I'm looking at it from my point of view. I don't care that Liam Kelly has chosen not to play with Ireland, because if there's any doubt in his mind, well, I don't really want to see him in and around an Ireland squad. Secondly, he's absolutely entitled to make this decision. Like, it's his life. Just the way Jack Grealish was, the way Scott Hogan was maybe just biding his time before he made any major declarations. I've absolutely no problem as a person with Liam Kelly or the decision that he's made. I am bemused by the coverage it's got. Like, he's playing for a team that is struggling to beat the drop in the championship. The manager has just been sacked. Yeah. And he's not having a good season. So he's no major loss to this squad. Well, he's no loss to this squad whatsoever. So as for him not being in the squad, don't care.
What about in 6 months, 12 months time then?
Well, he'd want to... Look, everybody wants to see a successful team. And football supporters, sports fans in general, are a very, very fickle bunch. And if Liam Kelly somehow either got a move or Reading stayed up and he shot the lights out in the championship next season and played some brilliant stuff, and having decided that he wants to play for Ireland, if you were to subtract this sequence of events, there'd be no question that he'd be in the team. I think sooner or later you'd be perfectly happy. There are so many examples over the years of fans that there was an outcry against a particular player, or he refusing to sign a contract. Wayne Rooney saying he wanted to go to Manchester City, and next of all he's scoring the overhead bicycle kick in the derby at Old Trafford.
He's just keeping his options open. He's clinging on to the likes of Jamie Vardy got an Tarkovsky and Mawson are in the England squad now, so he's clinging on to that. I believe. I don't know, but I believe that's what he's doing. He's keeping his options open. He's weighing it up. He doesn't want to commit yet. I don't want us to be plan B. If we're plan B, do one. In simple terms, Dave, and I genuinely feel that. So I'm not here 6 months, 12 months time.
I completely understand
if he's that good and if he goes on. Not for me, because I'll tell you what, I've been in squads before when there's been this type of talk of such and such has an Irish granny, or he might consider Ireland now. What do you mean he might consider Ireland now? That's nonsense.
The Mark Noble situation would have been a regular talk while you were in the Ireland
exactly,
squad.
And I'm telling you, if Mark Noble had come into the squad, I would have snapped him in half. Yes.
Yes. So I understand it. See, you're an ex-international midfielder, so I completely take your point and understand the position from where you're coming. But I'm not in that position because I've never played for Ireland, and
so you would rather see someone not fully committed.
I'm not saying I would welcome this guy back with open arms, and I would imagine that regardless of where his headspace is, there's no chance of him playing for Ireland while Martin O'Neill is the manager. Because O'Neill will just be now, do you know what? Absolutely not on my watch. But O'Neill might only be around for another year or 18 months. And Liam Kelly has the chance to play some really good football if that's where he finds himself, and decide that he actually does want to play for Ireland. And he will do so, probably coming from a position of remorse and acknowledging that he has an awful lot to do to win over the manager, his fellow international teammates and the Irish crowd. But I'll go back to the point I made about football supporters being incredibly fickle.
I agree with that.
And if Liam Kelly somehow managed to convince the manager and the players that he's good enough to play, comes in, plays well, gets the winner in a big qualifier, people will not remember what he said in the last week.
But I will.
So what? You have no relevance when it comes to what the international manager of the time. The only time you may have any relevance in this discussion is if you somehow end up as the Ireland manager.
It's not going to happen, Dave. Not going to happen. We need to move on from Ireland, chat, because we've gone way over. I want to move on to Man United. Jose Mourinho. Let's just remind you of cranky Jose pre-Brighton last weekend.
Of anything. I'm not afraid of my responsibilities. When I was 20 years old, I was nobody in football. I was somebody's son. What I was, with a lot of pride, when I was 20 years old, I was somebody's son. You know, and now, with 55, I am what I am. I did what I did because of work, because of my talent, and because of my mentality. So, you know, they can be together. You know, I understand that for many years was really hard for the people that doesn't like me. Here he is again. Here he wins again. Here he is again. Here he wins again. So for 10 months I win nothing. For 10 months I win nothing. The last title that I won was 10 months ago. You know, I beat Liverpool, I beat Chelsea, I lose against Sevilla, and now is the moment to be happy. Okay, you know, I also learned that in my religious formation. Be happy with others' happiness, even if the others are your enemies. So be it. I am a very lucky guy, and I'm really happy to be what.
Well, there was Jose pre Brighton the other day before the FA Cup game. Now, I don't want to dwell on him too much, but I have to say, when I seen that, I didn't mind it too much. I thought, I don't mind managers having a bite back. If you're getting criticised, really criticised, and everything's under the spotlight, which is obviously going to be at Manchester United, I don't mind that little bit of bite back reaction, pointing out, did he need to do it? No. The reason he's getting a lot of criticism is because the style of play is disgusting in terms of what's available, in terms of players not getting the best out of a lot of the players. What were your instant reaction to that when you seen it?
I'd be similar to you in that I don't have an issue with him trying to, you know, come back at the media a little. But there does seem to be a real blind spot when it comes to Mourinho and the reasons behind the criticism. He takes things very personally, and for me, watching that United game against Sevilla, taking the game out of its own context, just the game itself, I was comparing them to the other English teams that played in the Champions League knockout stages. Liverpool and City shooting the lights out, tearing teams apart at a not dissimilar level to Sevilla. Like, in my mind, there wouldn't be an awful lot between Sevilla, Porto and Basel. You know, they'd be of that second or third tier of European sides. And the way Chelsea played at the Nou Camp and the way Tottenham played over the two legs, for the most part over the two legs against Juventus, poles apart from what Manchester United tried to do over two games against Sevilla. And it was just the manner of the defeat that sent a message for me that this team will not progress any further than they have to this point under Jose Mourinho. And if Manchester United are going in the Premier League and they're going to win the Champions League, or at least contend in the Champions League to the point that they might reach a semi-final or a final, it's going to have to be under a different manager. Yes, it was a really good first season. He won the Europa League, they got back into the Champions League group stages, and they won a cup competition. And so he definitely took them on a level from where they were under Louis van Gaal. But this season, they've gone backwards.
They have, as the season's gone on, and even since the arrival of Sanchez, that's coincided with the downturn in Pogba's form. Even if it wasn't spectacular, but early season form certainly was good. Pogba hasn't. There's something drastically wrong with that relationship. Another relationship that I want to talk about, because we have gone over, is Luke Shaw. Now, this is a really strange one for me, because he was one of the most highest rated young players in England, still only 22. Sometimes I think Jose, what are you doing? Sometimes I think he clearly needs a rocket up his backside, this young man. If you look at this week, his old U-team coach, Jason Dodd, he's come out and said you constantly needed to be on him. Constantly on his back. Needed arm around the shoulder at times, but then needed a little dig as well. You're playing for a club of the size of Manchester United. It is an absolute 24/7 job. It's not a Southampton where you can coast along at times maybe. He's not putting it in for me. A lot of people out there might think that this is maybe too public in terms of the way he's going about things. I have no doubt behind the scenes there have been those conversations of arm around the shoulder, gone down that line.
If you listen to a lot of players that have played for Mourinho over the years, they speak of him so highly as a person and as a man manager, and about the time that he's willing to give them. Yes, he does make things public at times. We've seen it with Mkhitaryan, for example. We've seen it with Eden Hazard over the years. We saw it with Mesut Ozil. We've seen it probably with every club that he's ever played with. If he feels somebody just needs a little rocket up the arse, that he's prepared to say something in public. But I saw Luke Shaw come on. I can't remember what competition it was. It might have been an FA Cup tie over the last couple of months. He's a stone overweight. At the very least, he's a stone overweight. And if he was really putting it in, you would not be coming on in that kind of condition. He does not look like a Premier League footballer. He's probably the most out of shape, certainly on the eye, Premier League footballer in the division right now. And I would imagine that Jose Mourinho has exhausted all avenues in a bit to try and get this guy back on side. And maybe he's thinking this is the last resort. I'm going to have to publicly shame this guy into getting his act together. And you know, Luke Shaw is not a kid anymore.
No, I know.
You know, he's been at Old Trafford now for 3.5 years. So he's played for England. You know, he had a pile of Premier League appearances under his belt at Southampton. So he's not some teenager that needs to have his ego massaged and, you know, needs to be told that everything's going to be okay and that you're going to be great in the end. I think his days at Manchester United are numbered, because if you look at some other guys, like the way that Ashley Young has reinvented himself under...
But that says it all, Dave. That says it all. The fact that Ashley Young is playing left back ahead of him.
Yeah.
There's a World Cup berth up for grabs in that position. We're going to talk England in a few minutes. Danny Rose has hardly played this year for Spurs. He's had a very frustrating season. He's a player I like, but not guaranteed because of the season he's had. Ryan Bertrand's just pulled out of the England squad through injury. You've got the two in at the moment are Danny Rose and Ashley Young, his club teammate. He should be in that squad ahead of him. He gets dragged last week, so I totally agree about the weight. I heard a little murmur before where they were on him about his weight, on him about the gym work, on him about being professional away from Old Trafford. And on one of the away games, he gets onto the bus, troughing down a bag of Haribos. So, you know, like this is,
I like that one.
This isn't like under 12s. This isn't like you're going down to play Cherry Orchard on the lawns. This is like Premier League top football.
And it's not like he's in an environment where he doesn't have guys he can be inspired by. He only needs to look at the other flank and the team captain, Antonio Valencia.
All over
there. Who clearly dedicates himself to his profession.
Machine. Look at Zlatan. The recovery at the age he is. You could say what you want about him, but in terms of his professional nature, it's as good as it gets. I don't know what this lad is thinking.
We don't know what's going on in his mind. We don't know whether there are personal issues, family issues. You know, all we can do is speculate, but there would be those out there that would feel that it's a little too pointed and that Jose Mourinho is really not treating him like he should. But we don't know if Jose Mourinho has gone down that route many times over the last 18 months and has simply just lost patience.
These are the Jason Dodd quotes, his old U-team coach. He does make you pull out your hair at times. You have to try different things to get the best out of him. I think they have tried everything and they have not got through to him to get on and off the pitch to perform. Luke is one of those players where you have to keep on, you have to keep pushing him, and he needs to be challenged. I was constantly on him. He likes it. He needs more of a cuddle and then give him a little dig. That is how you get him going. He is a fantastic player. I don't think we're doubting that. But you have questioned some of it. His drive, training every day and giving absolutely everything. I think that says it all. That's his U-team coach who probably knows him.
And a guy who probably has an awful lot of respect and time for him, and yet that is a real indictment of the type of trainer that Luke Shaw is. That's probably, those quotes probably explain why Jose Mourinho has had to do what he's done. And he has written off players, Jose Mourinho, to the point where they have never seen the light of day under his managership subsequent to that. And that has not been the case with Luke Shaw. he's been speaking in these terms about Luke Shaw for quite some time now, and he's obviously given him a number of chances. So Luke Shaw hasn't just been kicked to the curb the way some players have that have been managed by Jose over the years, and he might get another chance. He's still in the squad, he's still getting game time. But like, he won't be in the England squad for the World Cup.
No,
and he's a Manchester United player that's looking, as you say, at guys who are coming in. There's a guy from West Brom on this team, Swansea and Alfie Mawson, not necessarily left backs, Tarkovsky. It's not like
he's missed an opportunity of playing at a World Cup.
Yeah, he is.
Fact. It was there for him, and he's missed out.
Like, maybe it doesn't really mean an awful lot to him.
Well, he'll regret it. One player we were just talking about, we're just hearing Zlatan has played his last game for Man United, talking of him moving to the MLS with 4 months remaining on his Old Trafford contract. No real surprise, came back at it a few games and didn't really look like he was back up to his usual. Amazed by the time frame it came back, so I'm not particularly surprised to hear that, are you?
No, we knew he'd be going into the end of the season. That injury that he picked up just a few weeks into his comeback was really unfortunate, because he never really got a time to test the knee to show us that he still has it. If he still is somewhere near the player that played in the Premier League last season, he's going to shoot things out over in the MLS. And I would just say thanks for the memory, Zlatan, because up until that really serious knee injury, he was one of the stories of the season. 26 goals was it that he scored? He got the winner in the League Cup final. He was clearly been talked about by Jose Mourinho as a guy that was a brilliant player to have around the training environment. Fellas like Marcus Rashford, Anthony Martial really looked up to him. And he has been an example, as are guys like Cristiano Ronaldo, Dani Alves. You can really say an awful lot about them personality-wise. You might not
totally agree,
spend any
but
time with
ultimate
them,
professionals.
but you can model yourself as a professional on these people.
Yeah. Right, we're going to move on to England, chat. I want to look towards the World Cup. This week we've seen the meet-up, a few unfashionable names in the squad. But I think this sums up where England are now in terms of what they have available to them, compared to maybe the golden generation that we see in mid-noughties.
Yeah.
Maybe the 2006 World Cup being a prime example of that. But in terms of what he's got available, we spoke earlier on about Ireland possibly playing three at the back. I think England are going to play three at the back. I think we've seen it in the friendlies already. I think he'll stick by it. I don't think he trusts the two centre-halves to play in it too. He has very good wing-backs, which we've already spoke about. If Danny Rose can get fit, Ashley Young has had a good season. And on the right-hand side, Kyle Walker, unbelievable. But defensively, a couple of surprises. Tarkovsky, Burnley flying in the Premier League, Alfie Mawson at Swansea, struggling but playing better lately. He has probably been one of the shining lights there. Joe Gomez at Liverpool, who in my opinion his best position is right side of a tree, so that would suit him down to the ground. And Harry Maguire, John Stones as well. So he's got good options there. But in terms of England as a whole, I lived over there for 21 years. Every single time a tournament came around, they expected to win it. They expected to be in and around winning it. And with the players that they had at their disposal, go back to that 2006 squad, you could understand it to a degree. But now I think expectation levels are quite reasonable. Look, they could get cranked up if there's a couple of decent victories this week and in the build-up. But if you look at the squad there from 2006, Gerrard, Lampard, Terry,
I went through it there
Ashley
and I picked
Cole.
out 5 players that you would have considered at the time to be genuine world
class.
Gerrard, Rooney, Lampard, Ashley Cole and John Terry.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the squad now, and this is a squad minus Harry Kane. There is no player that is remotely close to being world class. Possibly future
There's
caliber,
a few on the periphery
maybe
of it, isn't
Dele
there?
Alli, for example.
Rashford,
maybe
Sterling,
2-3
maybe.
years. Marcus Rashford, possibly. Kyle Walker might be just a tier below that. But I like this England squad.
Right, I'm with you on this.
What did the golden generation achieve? They can't do any worse than they did.
Feck all, in a nutshell. And I'm with you on this because this squad, if I was England, would excite me more, because I bet you my bottom dollar, they get on better. They'll be able to deal with been together for 4 weeks.
And there's a lot
less
of characters
egos,
in this team. Like, you've got
fighters.
fellas like Dele Alli, who's a scrapper, for
Yeah.
example. Jack Butland, who may start in goal. Or Jordan Pickford, sorry, who may start in goal.
Yeah.
He's a scrapper. These guys are willing to
position's
play
definitely
above themselves. But it is up for
play,
grabs,
isn't it?
yeah. But Pickford has been brilliant at times. Marcus Rashford, proper character. I think that a balance at back three of, for example, maybe John Stones, Harry Maguire and Eric Dyer, for example, or Joe Gomez, there's real balance to that. There's a bit of character as well as there being a little bit of guy like there would be with John Stones. And if you've got Harry Kane fit, fresh, I think when he went down with that ankle injury at Bournemouth, I would say Gareth Southgate was looking at going, this is the best thing that could have happened to me.
To get a little breather.
He's going to get 6
As long as
weeks
he
off now.
gets
And maybe
few
that'll be
weeks
the
before.
perfect time before he comes into World Cup camp. As you say, and then you've got a little bit of skill and ability that you can just sprinkle in on top of that in the likes of Jesse Lingard, Adam Lallana, for example.
Do you know what this team has got in abundance? Pace.
Yeah.
You mentioned Rashford, Sterling, wing-backs, Rose, Walker. There is pure Vardy if you want to stretch it, if you do want to go with two up top. You've got unbelievable pace, unbelievable energy, and you've got very little ego in terms of...
Yeah, we saw that really
comparison.
interesting discussion that they had on BT Sport between Lampard, Gerrard and Rio Ferdinand about the factors in holding that team under Sven-Göran Eriksson and then more laterally Fabio Capello. What held them back? They talked about the cliques that developed.
Yeah.
So great was the rivalry between Chelsea,
Big
Arsenal,
clubs.
Man U and Liverpool at the time. Man City weren't a factor at the time. Well, that's not going to be the issue anymore. There are 13 different clubs represented in this England squad. And several of the players are representing clubs that are struggling to beat the drop at the moment. You've got Jake Livermore from West Bromwich Albion, Jack Butland from Stoke. You've got Alfie Mawson at Swansea. You've got Lewis Cook at Bournemouth. All those clubs right now, maybe Bournemouth to a lesser extent, but they're looking over their shoulder and they're thinking we could be championship players next season. So all of these players, the majority of them, are also in the shop window in Russia this year. Because I know big World Cup, if they got the opportunity to start a game, puts them in a really good position when it comes to speaking to their agents over the course of the summer. And the only thing that I would feel that there's nothing Gareth Southgate can do about is the enormous pressure that's on these players when they're playing for England. And I think Irish players suffer from a little as well, particularly when they're playing qualifiers at home at the Aviva Stadium.
Do you?
But you saw against Iceland having
The underdogs playing against...
the underdogs playing against them and when they got that goal back.
Yeah.
They all started to hide, and there was no player that was able to play above the pressure of the situation. And if they're in a similar situation again in the World Cup this year, I don't know will...
Dele Alli spoke about it this week about in terms of that will hold us in good stead. That defeat, it's obviously not sitting well with them at all, and quite rightly so because they were poor. We also had Steve McLaren on here a few weeks ago, and we brought up the winter break debate. And he said going back to 2002, which would have been the World Cup before us, they played Brazil in the quarterfinals, I think it was.
Yeah, it's Ronaldinho's goal.
Yeah, there was one Seaman wasn't it?
Yeah,
Was that
caught
him?
out from the free kick, yeah.
He said they went in at half time, they were up, and he said they looked around and thought, oh dear, they're gone.
Wrecked.
They're gone. And he said, I think he was involved with 3 tournaments as an assistant. Every time they got them in, it was, what do we do with them? If we give them the rest, it's too hard to get them going. If we don't, it was such a conundrum for them to be able to get them ready. Whereas all the other teams, we've seen Roberto Martinez speak about, because obviously a lot of the Belgian players playing in the Premier League and how difficult it is for him. He's crying out for it in the Premier League. It's a big issue for these players come the end of the season, especially the ones that are playing Champions League football, going far in the cup competitions. Now, what you would say about this squad that he has available, and you've already highlighted, coming from 13 different clubs, they have got players that are playing in the main Saturday that maybe won't be as fatigued.
There won't be many players in this England starting 11 that will have played 60 games by the time they get to Russia. And then you will have guys like Harry Kane that's missed a bit of the season. He's had a break at the start of the season, and now he'll have a break towards the end of the season. Tottenham going out of the Champions League, I'm sure, is not something that Gareth Southgate would have lost any sleep over, nor is it in Manchester United's case. He's thinking that's a couple of games less for Marcus Rashford and Ashley Young. So I would be very positive about it. The biggest thing for them is that if they get out of their group, everything else is a bonus. Nothing else is expected of them. They've got a rookie manager. Nobody wants the England job anymore. Like if you had said that when Fabio Capello has been courted, that 7-8 years on, the England manager's job was going to be something that like you either took at the end of your career, like Sam Allardyce, or would go to someone at the very beginning of their career, like Gareth Southgate, who's never even managed a club in the Premier League. So if I was England fans, I'd be happy enough with the squad, and I'd be happy to look at them getting out of the group and then just seeing where they go from there, because they could turn into an underdog team that goes through the knockout stages, maybe wins a penalty shootout, suddenly you're in the quarterfinals and everybody starts to feel very good about themselves.
They drew a penalty shootout win.
Well, they are. Well, they've only ever had one in my lifetime, and I think that was against Spain in Euro 96 when Stuart Pearce kind of enjoyed that redemptive moment. But so much of it depends on Harry Kane, because he's the standout world-class player in that team. He's the Bale of this England team. And if he plays well and takes his chances, or they give him chances, England could hurt somebody. They're not going to win the World Cup. They're not going to get to a semi-final. They could take out a big side if they're organised, they're all going in the right direction, as you think they will be, because we've talked about the character of this team. And they've got a world-class striker that spearheads that attack, that could score the goal that'll get them into the next round. So I really am looking forward to watching England at this World Cup.
Right, that's all we got time for, buddy. Thank you, appreciate it.
I didn't think you'd get this far, did you?
No, what are we in now? Nearly an hour in. Will you be watching Ireland tomorrow?
Yeah, I will. I'll be in here tomorrow, and I will. I'll watch it for a couple of the storylines that we talked about earlier. But if we win 2 or 3-0 away to Turkey, like, what can you take from it, really?
Performances,
if
players
you lose 2 or 3-0,
taking the opportunities.
You'll write it off.
It's a game of opportunities for a few of these players, and I hope some of them take it. Thanks for coming in, Dave. Really appreciate it. Keith Andrew Shaw. I'll be back with you next Thursday from 12:30. Good luck.